When governments borrow beyond the capacity to repay, which clearly we've done, right? We have so much debt. There's no way the U.S. government can tax Americans enough to repay it, especially when we're so broke ourselves, right? And so there's only two choices. Once you recognize that the debt can't be repaid, then it's going to be defaulted on. And there's two ways that governments default on their debt.
One is to away or default.
Yeah, one is to be honest and say, hey, we can't pay, and we're not going to give you, your Social Security benefits. We're not going to repay this bond. You're out of luck, right? You screwed up. You trusted us, right? John Belushi. You be honest with it. But most politicians don't have an honest bone in their bodies, and the last thing they're going to do is fess up, right? So historically, they print money, and if you've borrowed in the currency that you print, there's really no barrier to prevent you from doing that. And of course, the inflation that you unleash, well, you blame it on the speculator, you blame it on OPEC, you blame it on unions or whatever you're going to do, but you don't accept responsibility. And so what gold really is your hedge, your protection against that eventuality. Because when the government looks to deprive you of your purchasing power, when they look to default through inflation, when the government wipes out its liabilities, it wipes out everybody else's assets if they're in that currency. And so look at it as a giant tax, or if you hold currency, if you hold treasuries, you're holding the bag. You're the one that has to meet all those promises that the government has made. But if you don't want that, if you want to be apart from that, if you want to escape that, then where are you going to go, right? You have to go someplace where the government can't tax you. They can, and if you have dollars, if you have a treasury or a muni bond that's in dollars, they can wipe that out. They can take that purchasing power from you. They don't have to tax you. They just print what you own, and they steal your purchasing power because they spend this new money into circulation before you get a chance to spend yours, and they bid up all the prices. But if you have real money, then you prevent that from happening. And eventually, if the dollar collapses, the government won't be able to buy anything with its paper because nobody will accept it. And so if you have that same currency, no one wants it either. But they'll always want your gold. And you'll always be able to buy things if you have gold.
So you said you don't like giving a price for gold. And neither do I. People will always ask me what the price is, and sometimes, I'll say, well, if it rose to meet the base money supply, like it did in 1934 and like it did in 1980, it would just be history repeating, and we'll have $13,000 gold. Yeah. If it overshot, like it did in 1980, we'll have $22,000 gold. And that's a moving target, though. If they do, when they do QE4, that's going to go up.
Oh, and then they do QE5 and QE6.
Right. Look, but the Dow Gold ratio, I know that gold should outperform stocks, but we're at 15 right now.
I think it goes closer to 1.
I do too. I think it could go to 1/2, which means 30 times the performance of stocks.
I don't know that it goes to 1/2, but it might go to 1 or 1.5. Because it got down to about 1-to-1 in 1932, and it got down to about 1-to-1 in 1980. So during times of economic,
it was 2-to-1 in 32. The Dow hit 40.22 points,
and gold was 35.
It was $20.67.
No, they had already
They
devalued. When did they devalue? 35.
They nationalized in 33 and they devalued in 34.
All right. So at that point, it wasn't quite. So that means the low for the Dow in terms of gold was 1980.
Yes, exactly.
Which shows you that stocks in 1980 in terms of gold were a lot cheaper than they were. Even at the bottom of 1932.
And into stocks.
Yes. And I'm sure that hopefully that time will come again.
Yeah.
But there is no ceiling to the price of gold because there's no floor to the value of the dollar.
I love that. Yeah, it's a beautiful statement. Now people get it when you say that.
But I mean, when you talk about how high can it go? Well, what's the price of gold in Zimbabwe dollars?
Right.
How high did it get? How many zeros did you have to put at the end of that? What was the price of gold in Weimar Republic, Germany? So you don't even know. Trillions, zillions, whatever the number that comes after that is. So there is no limit to where it could go.
By the time they came out with the Rentenmark, with the exchange rate from the paper mark to the Rentenmark, it was $87 trillion an ounce.
The price of gold. Yeah.
Marks an ounce. I'm sorry, 87 trillion marks an ounce is where it.
Yeah, so
that
if somebody,
hyperinflation
if you were sitting in some German cafe and, in 1920, someone says, well, where do you think the price of gold's going to go? And you came up with how many trillion marks.
Right.
Nobody could come up with a price target like that.
Right.
But that's what happened, because, it ran out of control. And
I just like to say that it should buy X amount more real estate, and it should buy X amount more stocks based on these historic ratios.
But the one thing, look, our politicians and our bankers are no better than the German politicians or the bankers were.
Right.
Maybe they're more arrogant, but they have no more control of this system, and it's gonna run out of control. They think they have everything covered. They think they can control this. Like you hear the Fed say, yes, if inflation starts to pick up, we have the policy tools. No, they don't, because they can't use them. Because if they raised interest rates to fight inflation, we'd have a worse financial crisis than '08, and they don't have the stomach for that. They didn't have the stomach for it then. So it's all a bluff, but the market eventually is going to call their bluff.
I absolutely agree.
Yeah.